Well, welcome you guys to Fuller Evangelism Church Planting. I am thrilled y'all are part of our coffee talk today. And I would love for you all to introduce yourselves and then share with our class what you guys have been up to and about your ministry.
Yeah. So you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah.
I'll start us off. Well, my name is John Pendergrass, and I'm the Vice President for the Initiative Network. And what that really means, VP, is I am the Chief Administrator. Everything from creating budgets to strategy. When this guy gives vision, I take that and run with it and help implement. So it's all about young adults, all about millennials, and this is where God has me. So I'm excited to be here with you today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great to have you,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah. My name is Grant Skeldon. I am the Director of Initiative. Our mission statement is to shift the culture of Dallas by making millennials Christ-loving, city-changing, church-investing, disciple-making, local missionaries.
Say that one more time.
Yeah.
Christ-loving, church-investing, disciple-making, city-changing, local missionaries.
It's a lot.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Basically in response to a culture that we see is kind of divided and tumultuous. And there seems to be a lack of hope in this next generation taking on the helm of leadership for this city, just for our city as well as the nation. And then all the negative comments towards this generation that's coming up. But we were seeing the opposite, and we're seeing God moving in a lot of young adults. Now, they were few and far between, but we started to gather and unify those young adults that are Christ-loving, city-changing, church-investing, disciple-making, and created a network. And now, out of that has birthed a lot of coaching and consulting and unifying and helping and investing in the church to see this is what works with our generation. And a lot of it revolves around evangelism, unity, and discipleship in our experience.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. And I'm Chelsea Vaughn, and I'm the director for both dependence and culture. And so what I get to do with our team is just keep an eye on the organizational health of our organization. Yeah.
She does a really good job of it. Yeah, she does.
Thanks. So I care so much about culture. I grew up in an international community, and so we had a very unified but diverse culture, and that's really one of our core values for initiatives. So I just look at our different core values and make sure that they are daily things that we're walking in. And make sure that we're also dependent, that we remember why we started an initiative and who gave us the vision. And it wasn't Grant, it was God. So making sure that we are leaning into dependence and really praying first.
So how did the Lord, how did you all get this vision for initiative? How long have you been around? When did it start?
A little over 2 years right now.
Mm-hmm.
It started, so we've actually been friends for a while. A lot of the core leaders in Initiative, before we called it Initiative, we were friends, and we were striving for, we wouldn't say this probably, but definitely striving to love Christ more. Definitely had a passion for our city. Don't know if we thought we can change it, but we had a passion for it. Definitely had a heart for like being mentored and discipled, which I think most young adults have a heart for it. But a lot of us were impacted by it. And then we're involved in our church. Some of us actually at that time went all to the same church. So we knew each other. I think when a group called Movement Day Greater Dallas came about, which was birthed out of Movement Day New York with Tim Keller and Mac Peer, when they brought that here, they wanted young adults to be a part of this collaborative, kingdom-minded conversation around leaders unifying to impact the city. And so that's Tim's big thing right now is Why Cities Matter is a book that he came out with. And basically his idea, and I agree, is like if you could impact the leaders who impact the city, major cities in the nation, you'll impact the rest of the world. Basically, rural parts of town don't influence the city. The city impacts those parts of town. So he felt like if you can reach New York and London and Dallas, like all these different areas. Now I think they're going to like Dubai and all these areas. So we just were the second place. And honestly, long story short is we gathered together in a small green room and shared our passion and our love for God and also our diverse occupational bent. I remember her sharing that she had a passion for writing. John has a passion for politics. There was people that wanted to end human trafficking. There were people that wanted to be missionaries in Africa. But we all shared, this is what God has put on our heart. And I think it was very encouraging for young adults to see there's a lot of other young, mature believers that are so serious about the Lord's work in their heart and in their city. And then that created these new friends that created a network of local missionaries, which is now Initiative. Yeah.
That is fantastic. And I know there are components. Tell us about the 72 and what you all do at the 72.
Y'all want to do that? One of y'all?
Sure.
Okay.
So 72, if our mission statement is to shift culture by creating local missionaries, 72 are the local missionaries that we're focused on. We had big events that were drawing 300 to 500 people, but that at the end of the day, that wasn't accomplishing the mission statement of really shifting culture by local missionaries. It was just having really influential or impactful events. So we said, let's get 72 based on Luke 10, where the disciples then send out the 72 to share the good news of Christ in different parts of the world. That's our hope with 72. Yeah. We have a group that's so diverse, of diverse people in denomination, diverse people in background and ethnicity, nationality even, and then diverse people in denomination. Is that what I said the first one? And so just really focusing on something that we're really big on is the 7 spheres of culture. And that's, I may need some help, but it's arts, it's politics, it's business, entertainment, family, religion, and education. So focusing on those 7 spheres of culture and saying, if we want to shift culture, we have to shift people in each of those spheres that can then carry biblical, authentic culture. And that's how we're going to shift culture. That's how we're going to accomplish our mission statement, is training the 72.
So it's really deep discipleship making and leadership formation of the 72, right? And what I loved in getting to know you guys is that, as you say, they're millennials who work in the church, but they're also working in the business world and arts. I mean, it's such an amazing, I love what God is doing through you guys. So basic question, because we're looking at these weeks at Fuller of what it means to be an evangelistic church. And I think a question for lots of people is, what is a millennial and how do we engage millennials as the church? How do we evangelize millennials? So first question, what is a millennial?
Technically, it's someone born after 1980 and before 2000. So within that, though, I would also preface that there are, that's a pretty big range. Like, I think there's several different types of millennials. For example, we are young single millennials, but there's also young marrieds. Like, you could be early 30s and be married and still count as a millennial. You also could be early 20s and married. Like, marriage changes the stage of life, clearly. So it's just different. I mean, even technically, there's some that are teenagers, higher up teenager age, that are technically still millennials right now. So that's very different than even me. And like, they grew up with the phone and technology and access to that. While I probably got one in about 7th grade, I would say you probably got it in like 5th grade, 6th grade.
It was 6th grade.
Yeah, they would have gotten it like maybe in. So us in middle school, they would have got it in elementary.
Wow. So what age, born after 1980?
So I think that would be, it's around like 18 to 34-year-olds.
18 to 34-year-olds. What are millennials all about? I mean, if you could characterize your generation, what are some core values and some core characteristics of millennials?
Passion.
Authenticity.
So I say authenticity, that's a big one. Independence.
Rejection of the conventional.
Yeah, and I maybe wouldn't say it will inevitably lead to rejection. But I would say like just questioning what is necessity. Like I don't think they think, oh, that is institutional, so I got to reject it. I think it's like that might be a thing that everyone else does. Get engaged in politics, go to college for a long time, get a job that's gonna maybe not be that awesome for 5 years, so that one day you can get one that you actually like, or never get one that you like but you make a lot of money. Those are pillars that like, or even marriage is being prolonged. Get married and then struggle for a long while because maybe you should have waited and made sure it was the right person because you saw your parents and their grandparents get divorced over and over again. So those things, I don't think that there's other things though I think they do, like even one of the church is a pillar, like, hey, you got to be in church. For them, it's like, why? Like just being able to question that, like, is it a necessity? And I think if you could prove that it is a necessity, they will be involved. I think, for example, politics, it's like, well, you got to help change the country, but sometimes it makes it seems like if you get involved, does that truly get the results you want? Like right now, there's a lot of people that are frustrated because they're very, very involved, but it doesn't seem like they're getting the results they want. Or
Right.
go to college and you will get a job. There's a lot of young adults that are in huge debt with no job, and they went to college.
Right.
Get married and you'll be happy, or get a job that provides and you'll be happy. And there's people that, our generation especially, we got to see our parents get jobs, hate it, and it never led to happiness, even though they could provide. So that provision alone did not lead to happiness. So just though I do see a skepticism and a shifting of priorities based on where can I find purpose and pleasure, not just provision, in the things that I do.
Right. So but as part of that passion, wanting it to be rooted in a sense of purpose and not just doing something because the culture tells you to do it. Mm-hmm. So questioning.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, even think about purpose. I would say in that young adults, I don't think by and large just decide I dislike church or I reject church. If you show me a church that young adults are going to, I would show you probably a church that is missional or evangelistic in some form or fashion. Like have said, we were going to reach our city. I just have found most young adults, they don't flock to the churches that are kind of dormant. They flock to the churches that are like, we still believe God could do a great work in our city. I've noticed this. There's a common bond of like, okay, if I go here, it's going to make a difference. If I don't go here, we can't make as great of a difference. While some churches, if it's like, if I don't go, they'll never notice. That's not going to be a church that they're probably going to want to be at. Because again, it's not just rejecting. It's, is this a necessity, or is this going to be something that's going to truly impact my life and other people's life, or will they they won't even notice?
I would say this generation is also marked by service and giving. People would say, millennials don't give. How can millennials give? But actual survey said that most millennials are giving, and it's what's important to them. Previous generations at that age, between that age range of 18 to 35, like the Xers or even the Boomers, didn't do that. Service would say that within the last year, 80% of millennials had served in some sort of capacity, and I think if churches saw the opportunity in that,
yes,
that's opportunity. And I think that this generation is marked by service and giving. Compared to previous generations, it's just off the charts. So I thought that was interesting.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really beautiful. 80% of millennials serve.
Yep. So
how does the church, just in thinking about, I mean, we're talking to many planters here, but some of these students are seminarians and going to be going into kind of mainline churches. How does the church reach out and engage millennials? Like, where do we even begin? Like a group of leaders sitting around a table saying, we want to reach out to millennials. Where in the world do we start?
Yeah, the first thing that we always go to is discipleship.
Yeah.
That is going to reach the millennials, but that's going to reach the generation under millennials, and then that will reach the generation under them. Discipleship is really the only way to consistently be relevant and intentional with reaching a generation, is discipleship, a one-on-one relationship with them.
So what does that mean what does that mean for a church? So you say one-on-one discipleship. Would that mean, I'm just thinking in practical ways,
Yeah.
would that mean as church leadership calling all the members together and saying, will you reach out and disciple a millennial? Or does it mean having really excellent adult education? Or what does that look like? Or small groups, or in a practical way?
So it definitely not. I don't necessarily mean education. You know, I haven't said this too much. I've been thinking about this a lot. Education has been synonymous in the church a lot of times with discipleship. Like,
Mhm.
if I can get this information to you, that's discipleship.
Mhm.
And the way I got to do it is by speaking it. And that is not, one, that's not fully discipleship. It's definitely like there's been mentoring relationships that are done at tables and impactful moments I've had with certain people that have mentored me that have been awesome. But you were just telling me before the interview that you got to follow J. John.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus had the disciples follow him. So there's certain things that they caught without him ever actually teaching on it, because it was caught instead of taught. In the same
Right.
way, I'm sure like there's got to be moments where J. John didn't even say anything. You just saw the way he carried himself and did
Absolutely.
certain things. And that's different than saying, hey, all the millennials come to this class. And we're
Yes.
very quick to do that in the church. And here's the second reason I don't think that's really a great draw and necessity to millennials is um, professional, or not professional, I would say expert advice is a lot more saturated for young adults. I could go to a podcast. I could go on YouTube. I could do church online. If churches really become just get information through the speaking of the word, then why do I need to show up? And I know you need community. Like, I know all these things, but as a young adult, I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes. But if you tell me there's a place in the church where there's someone that's going to say, hey, like, asking me hard questions, asking me about my story, asking me about my passions and my purpose, and then saying, I want to show you how you can get here, so your passion and purpose leads you here. I'm going to show you how to get from A to Z. What place does that right now? Like the business community, you get a job there, they're going to tell you, you be an intern and you show humility, and maybe one day, if you pay your dues, you can have my position. If you go in any other place, they're not going to give you big opportunities and responsibilities. But you go to a church, if there's a church that would be like Jesus did, look, I'm going to make you fishers of men. That means I'm going to give you responsibilities even before you deserve it. I'm going to give you new names, and I'm going to believe in you before you even deserve being believed in. Like, Peter, I'm going to call you Rock even though you're going to deny me 3 times. Not tomorrow. 3 years later, you're still going to be kind of flaky. There's few places young adults can go to and find that kind of belief in what they're doing, given of ownership and responsibility, and a very great and compelling vision. And I think that's where the church is poised to be like, man, they could. It's like young adults are wanting the church, but the church right now, it doesn't seem like when you walk in all the time, like it's wanting young adults.
I think a lot of it is um, of people who might be a little bit older, even Xers. I'm an Xer, to say, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to begin to meet millennials, and then if they do come in the church doors, um, even how to begin that conversation. I mean, I'm just thinking in a very practical way. I guess being an evangelistic church is having everyone attuned to when someone new comes in, that we welcome them and begin conversation. I mean, this is basic, like, conversational communication skill stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking practically, if a lot of people say, well, a millennial wouldn't want to hang out with me. I'm a
Right.
retired baby boomer. I mean, how do we have spaces where that interface happens to even have those organic relationships start?
Yeah. I was at an event yesterday, a church in Fort Worth that I think is doing a really good job at trying to bring both generations together. And they said that exact struggle. It's like, man, once we get them together, how do we like create good foundation for both these generations that don't tend to always just hang out all the time together? And he has a line that is very similar to what we found to work really well. Is he says we try to connect backpacks to briefcases. And what he was trying to say is like, you don't just connect them around everything because that can be overwhelming. But if you simplify it at first, it's just like your backpack, you're a college student, and you're in a learning phase. Even if you're out of college, you're trying to climb the ladder in some sort of work that you love and feel passionate about, and then connect them to someone that has the briefcase that is a little older, they have a more seasoned, and say, how can I connect a guy that maybe has a passion for numbers and accounting or engineering or let's say it could be writing, and hopefully knowing, well, we know a writer in the church. Let's connect those two, this backpack to the briefcase, and say, will you just sit down with them and share with them what the road to getting where you are looks like? Because they would love to be in your shoes one day. And all of a sudden, you have a very, very relevant conversation to start there, and then let the Spirit like continue to build on what else could you show them other than just how to get there. Maybe walk alongside of them. Because one of the worst things that has happened to our generation, but it sounds and seems good, I think, this might just be my opinion, is going to your kid and saying like, "Son, you can be anything you want to be," and then giving them the freedom to find out how. You should then say, "And son, I'm going to help you along the whole way."
Right.
And that's what's lacking is like, man, a passion and a pent up pressure. Even I can be anything. I'm supposed to be anything. I'm supposed to do something crazy and awesome, but I just don't know how. And that's where I think the older generation can come in and really show them the way.
I think one more thing I wanted to add to that, even it goes back to the previous question, is community. The world's doing a really good job, specifically here in the United States. You look at all of the restaurants and like shared workspace, collaborative. Young adults flock to those things. That's just where they're at. That's what they want. You go to restaurants, you no longer get your own little table. You're sitting at a table, family style, eating with a lot of people. And so my suggestion to a church planner, and even word of those spaces and places, is if the community's good, that is attractive as a millennial too, going into a church. Is that space available? Traditionally, you see a lot of churches that will have singles only community groups. Those aren't bad in itself, but I think what a lot of millennials will tell you is that having that multi-gen group that would be available for community, having that space where maybe I'm about to get married or desire to be married, it would be really nice to be around some newly marrieds.
Yes.
Or I've never been mentored by a man who has gray hair. I really want to know and pick his brain. And I think we make assumptions that this generation does not want that, and it's quite the opposite. They desire that. So if that's available within the church, that community is available. I know a lot of church planners that wait a long time to form community groups. I would say I would start out as soon as possible and have that space available. That's how you make that happen.
Yes.
So,
In the community group, multi-generational community
community groups.
And I'll piggyback on that with a challenge to any church planters is that that's a hard thing to facilitate. I was at a roundtable for my church that is very multicultural, very multi-generational. Well, not very multi-generational. We're heavy on the young people, but there is multi-gen. What's difficult is that all of our home groups are set up like that.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we want. That is exactly what is good for us. And my home group leader is discipling me. So there's discipleship, there's, diversity, but we're striving for unity. I think the one thing, if Fuller University has a lot of church planters and that's what we're talking about, then my challenge would say endure well, because that is what we want, but it's not, we'll flake out. We won't go. I'm not saying, I'm going to claim and say young adults are probably not going to commit, or they're probably not going to want to stick with it. But something that Grant and I have found in our home group is we've got to keep striving for this, and we've got to be leaders that, put forth what we want to get out of it. And so my pastor was talking about that this past Wednesday, as he said, if you want multi-gen relationships, you have to endure through the awkward part. And so good. True.
That's an excellent word. That's an excellent. So I know that a lot of and I'm in a mainline denomination. You all have worshiped with us, some very high church, organ music, hymnal. And do we need to change our music to engage millennials?
I think you do need to open up to saying, if the only people in the room are deciding what the flow of ministry looks like are people of one homogenous group, and that's the same thing for racial reconciliation, which is becoming a big topic. It's like if white people are the only ones coming up with, I think this is what black people would like, and you don't have a black person there, that's a problem. In the same way, if it's like one generation is trying to decide what the next generation, I can almost sometimes tell when I go to something, I was like, this is what edgy, like 40-ish year olds would think young adults would like. Or this is what 50-year-olds that don't have any relationship with millennials would think that I could, or I could tell this is what millennials, I can almost tell millennials must have come up with this. And sometimes that doesn't mean it's awesome. Sometimes like, this is good, but you're kind of missing the point. Like I could tell like who came up with it. So I don't think one generation should come up with it. I think it should be together. So I would say giving up an ownership. But here's what I found like with liturgy and with very sacred things, as I've gotten around more mainline churches, is I really enjoyed seeing some of the stuff that you guys did. And specifically, I've been around a Catholic friend of mine who's been, he just shared little things with me. Like, for example, I have historically heard from the Protestant side about Catholics, like, they still have Jesus on the cross. And that's bad and blah, 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 because Jesus has risen. And I've always been like, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's true. Like, we don't have Jesus on the cross. I don't wear Jesus on my cross. And then I talked to my Catholic friend. He said, we have Jesus on the cross so that it's still personal. And I was like, man. He's like, if you take Jesus off the cross, and so he's like, sometimes we don't have Jesus on the cross, but when you take it off the cross, it's just a symbol. It's just a thing. And you forget this was a person on this that was tortured. This isn't a cool thing. This was like torture to our God, and he took that place. And that makes it very personal. And I was like, man, that's rich, like really rich. So I think what you can keep some of the stuff, absolutely, and need to just make sure you explain why. Like I would say there's some things where I saw, I was like, but I don't know why certain things happened that night.
Right.
And I bet there's a rich history. Yeah. So I do think, again, young adults need to know. They grew up with their parents saying, do this. And you, why, Mom? Yeah. Because I told you so.
Right.
Oh, do this because I told you so. Go to college. I told you so. And some of it was like, Mom, you told me so, but it didn't work out. Or some of it's like, Mom, why didn't you just say, because this? And then I would have been bought in myself.
Right.
And sometimes when we take away the why, and we just do it the way we want, we rob them of the rich, like, ability to worship in the same way that we get worship.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's so excellent. What are the obstacles to faith for millennials? What holds millennials back from even exploring Christianity?
I'll say a really quick one. I think I've been thinking about this morning because we're about to do a training on evangelism for like a couple hours with our 72 group that she mentioned. And I was thinking, what is the number one fear? And I might be wrong, but my feeling is that the good news is actually bad news, or that we've treated good news like bad news. Yeah. Like, I was carrying I have one of those ESV, like really thick Bibles, right? And I went to a restaurant, and it was that night I was reading my Bible, and I was like, man, I'm hungry. So I thought, I'll just bring it because I know there's going to be a long line, and I'll just read it while I'm in this line. And as I'm carrying it it's called Spiral Diner, I realized, it's big, like, I'm like, man, I'm kind of ashamed of having this Bible. Like, I don't want people to see me. No, it's one thing to have a Bible, but to have, like, this one, I'm like, man, what are people going to think of it? Like, and I realized, I think they're going to think I'm a bad person instead of like, man, that's a man of God, or that's good news, or this is a steward of the mysteries of God, is what the Bible said. And I was like, why do I think that? And because our community, our generation, and just people have had such unfortunate bad experiences sometimes with churches that it's really burned them. And one way, even you could do this at home, is like, we sometimes show this where if you put in Google or in Yahoo or Bing and you search, why are Christians, and then you know how it feels like current searches that are often happening, it will say things like, and these are real searches that people have put in there. It'll say, why are Christians so judgmental? Why are Christians so mean? And so that means people are looking to answer the question, why are they so closed-minded? Why are they so harsh? Or why are they so these things? And it's not any nice words. It's a lot of like people searching for truth behind why are Christians negative and bad, bring as if the gospel is bad news instead of good news. So that, I know that's not true, but sometimes it just seems like we treat the gospel like it's bad news instead of condemnation, instead of good news of freedom in Christ.
Yeah, I think this is my opinion. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I think it's having a lack of a parent in the home that is championing the church. I think a lot of the previous generations, like my own father, has been burned by the church, and he has never looked back. And so, by the grace of God, I am where I am because Christ chased me, and I found him. He found me. I found him. I think that's what we're getting. She said hurdles, and I really do think that there's a lot of young adults who may still be at home with their parents, and their parents aren't talking. There is no pastor in the home at all. There's nobody championing Jesus in the home, and so we're relying upon people to evangelize. And they're asking those questions right there. Why are Christians so? They're going to the internet because there's nobody at home to tell them that's false. That's not true at all. So I think that's one of the hurdles we're up against, and it's going to require, for those of us who are in the faith, to evangelize. We have to, because there's no proponent in the home, whether it be mom. And it used to just be maybe mom was, and then dad just really didn't believe. Well, now it's mom and dad. So I think that's what this generation's up against.
Well, that is huge. So how do we, with that hurdle, how do you begin to have a conversation about the Lord with a millennial? Where do you start? I know it's different for whoever you're with, but where do you begin?
You know, something that I used to do when I was talking to non-believers, I had a really good friend. She was my yoga instructor, actually, and she was the first person that I did this with. I used to, so in the past, when I would talk to non-believers about the Lord, and they would say things like, the church burned me, or my parents were believers, but they really only did it for the rules, or said things, negative connotations, kind of like the good news is actually bad news, or jaded. Then I would try to prove that I was different and show Christ by showing myself, which in theory isn't that bad, but in theology is very bad, because I can't just say Christ is good because I'm good. No.
Right.
I'm good because Christ is good. And I represent like the church that Christ is coming to marry. The church that has burned you, I'm sorry. Like, please forgive them. But that's not something that I can justify. Only Christ can justify that. And so apologizing rather than agreeing to condemn and say, but I'm different, so you should love Jesus because I'm really good. So I don't know if that makes sense, but with this yoga instructor, I apologized on behalf of them and said, like, Christ is sanctifying them, and I pray that Christ is sanctifying that church, but I'm part of that church, and I fail too. And identifying that, like making that more realistic, I saw it in her eyes so much. That resonates because then it's claiming that imperfection and highlighting Christ's perfection rather than trying to say, I'm better than that.
Yes.
By trying to, something that we kind of coin as doing PR for Jesus. We don't need to do PR for Jesus. Jesus does enough PR for himself.
Yeah. But we just need to talk about him, don't we? But it's how to do that. How do you do
this? Is in the last year I found this out, and I used to say this to myself, like if I speak to high school students, I always think in my process of how to preach to them is like, if I could go back to 16, what would I tell myself? And I used to think, and I still do think, I would tell myself, pray more. Like it's far more than just like a shot in the dark. Like it's huge. I would say the other one though that lately I've been thinking is I would have told myself, don't just invite people to church. Like talk to them about Jesus and their relationship with Him. And so one thing that's changed is, and don't just try to be cool and a Christian, like and their friend and nice, be intentional. Like just straight up talk to them about God. Like for whatever reason, my car keeps messing up and I have to take Ubers. So every time you're talking to strangers and they always kind of want to know what you do. Or I just got my hair cut a couple of days ago, and it's this dude that's all tatted up, big guy, and he's like, hey man, what do you do? And like you're in ministry, almost every time if you kind of say, I'm a pastor, usually my thought was they're going to shut down. And I think maybe I don't need to say, I don't know, I used to literally, there were times when I would say I am a teacher because that wouldn't make them shut down, and they would say, "What do you teach?" And I really did do this sometimes. They would say, "What do you teach?" And I would say, I teach on things that major events that happen in Greco-Roman history. If you get like what event that is, and about Christ, and so it's just dumb, like trying to hide what we do. Now I just straight up say like, "Hey, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus, and He changed my life." And then go into like, and I lead a nonprofit because sometimes we as the church can do this and that. And I've even been burned by the church, so we're kind of coming along this church and helping them reach young people because right now they're kind of walking away. And so I was like, "Am I going to tell this guy?" It's the first time I met him. I need to find a new barber, and he's like, "Really? That's cool, man." He's like, "I just started this clothing line called Faith Addicts and stuff." And albeit he's a Christian, I was like, and I thought, "Oh, this guy, oh, I'm tatted up. Like, I'm glad they don't think that I'm not a Christian because of that." But I thought this guy's totally not a Christian. So it was cool. As I thought, man, what if I would have not said it, and what if I would have tried to bounce around? Like, I kind of do some nonprofit work that helps the city, and then there's been times before when I was just very vague. Yes. Because I was like, I want to get to know you and love you, and then I can tell you later about Jesus. But it's cool. Our conversation then went straight into things about God. And there's been times when it's been with other people that aren't Christians, and they've never, in my experience, said, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible." Yeah. Most of the time, the thing that I talk to them is I ask them, "Have you ever been to church? Have you had any type of experiences with church?" Because I want to know. Most of the time, I've found that people don't have a problem with Jesus or God; they have a problem with Christians or the church. Yes. So I want to know what happened. Like, where did our reflection of the true Christ mess up? And can I take ownership for that and apologize? And then also, can I tell you what Jesus actually did? And sometimes it's not like maybe it wasn't bad. Like, there's a lot of times I see and they're like, "You know, it was bad, this and that, but it wasn't that bad." He's like, "Honestly, I like how Christians do this, or I like," and then just give them more clarity on what Jesus is about. But I do think not hiding that you're a Christian or you love God, just go into it. And again, one great thing, despite all the negative connotation that comes with millennials, is they're really good at authenticity and being real and just telling when something's fake. So if you can be a real, honest, raw Christian, there's something about that that's actually attractive. Like, whoa, you're not wearing a mask. And a lot of people wear masks.
Yes, so that personal, just being real.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is that she's talking about owning up to whatever may have happened in the past and swallowing your pride. And he's talking about raw. And I'm saying what really works for me is intentionality. I think that's something we need to couple with all this because everywhere I go in the L test, everywhere I go, I don't care if I'm in the gas station or in a restaurant, I will spend the time to just really ask the question. Those conversations, those opportunities are going to be missed if you don't take a shot and just ask the question is, where were you born? Are you from around here? I mean, we have to, as Christians, we have got to get better at engaging people with intentionality. And if we don't, we're going to always miss those shots. And so you would not believe, I live in a small community just northwest of here. And I can tell you, I have relationships with most of the restaurant waitresses and waiters, gas station attendants, coffee shop baristas, because I'm intentional. And because of that, those walls are coming down. I'm able to have these types of conversations. So I think that's a really good start. So
it's taking time. I mean, one thing I've always thought is one way to be countercultural as followers of Jesus is to give people time.
Yes. Good.
And to ask, as you said, ask questions, meet people where they are, be authentic, share your story, say, "I'm not perfect," and be willing to show your vulnerability.
Right.
And you said something the other day, Grant, that stuck with me. If you want to be a person of significance, it's something about being vulnerable. What did you say? Impact.
If you want to impress people, share your successes. But if you want to impact people, share your failures.
Yeah.
If you want to impress people, share your successes. If you want to impact people, share your failures.
That was John Maxwell, by the way.
That's right.
John's watching this.
Yeah.
I said
Shout out to John Maxwell.
Yeah. Right.
Final question. So now the millennials are in the church. How do we engage them in leadership? What should we do? What word do you all want to say to planters in how to assimilate and make disciples and bring in
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
to answer your question a little bit, and I don't know what the answer is going to be, but when was the time where you felt like, I'll give you an example and then I ask you, like, what time did someone give you a responsibility bigger than you felt like you deserved at a younger age that you're like, oh, wow, this is a big deal. I've got to step up in order to do this. Like John, when I was 19, 20 years old, he started a nonprofit and he let me be a board member on a nonprofit. I had never heard of a board member that was 19 or 20 years old. And it made me think, like, as a freshman in college, I gotta like be a good leader. I need to read books to be a better leader. I need to ask questions. I need to grow up. I need to live a life of more character. And I didn't say it didn't snap like that, but there was a different posture shift. At that time, did you have a moment like that?
Probably in my 30s.
Yeah. Who was it?
With
or what
Michael
happened?
Green. With Michael Green, my mentor, saying, "I'm going to have you start speaking." And I thought, oh, wow. Okay. They really want to hear him, and he's going to get me up there. I better have something to give.
Yeah.
And, like, I need to massively step up. Not only with content, but in my prayer life and just being on my knees for God's help.
That's good.
And that was life-changing.
That's so good.
And it probably, like me, and I think like your question, how do we get them engaged and involved, is give them ownership, and some of it may be bigger than they actually deserve or can really handle, and it'll force them to do two things. It'll force them to one, rely on the Spirit and rely on God and turn to Him, and then two, maybe also hopefully rely on you, the person giving the responsibility, and maybe even three is it helps them realize, wow, like, you know a lot, like you really, I didn't realize that what your job is hard, but they now understand the intricacies of it, and they have more ownership in it. And one thing I keep seeing is a common thread of young adult ministries that are led by young adults, that are thriving, is it's like whatever you allow them to create, they'll help carry it also. And I found that a lot of times whenever it's not doing well with young adults, it's like because young adults aren't carrying it and they're not creating it. And whatever you help create, you will want to carry it out. Just like an entrepreneur, he doesn't just have the idea and say someone else work for it. He's like, no one else is going to do it. I have to wear all the hats. Like everyone says that. In the early days, you got to wear all these hats because no one else is going to do it. If you really care and you created it, you're going to wear the hats and the responsibilities, from the cool stuff to the picking up chairs and doing all that. And we're robbing this younger generation of carrying it because they didn't create it at all.
That's excellent. I'm going to step off camera.
Okay.
And if I could just have y'all talking to the church planters, say something to them, a challenge or a food for thought, kind of a parting thought on behalf of your generation. I'm going to step off, and if y'all could just, there's the class. Hi, guys.
What's up?
If y'all could just, we'll just go, John, Grant, Chelsea, just say a word to our planters.
Yeah, I'll just start us off then. I'm going to use the word table, and what I mean by that is have a plan and have a table. Quit, for heaven's sake, quit sending people to kiosks. It's like going to a snow cone stand and there only being two flavors. Have a table and a plan set up where young adults do show up to your church. Is there a space and a time and a place where young adults can come and interact with the staff? If it's just you and somebody else, that's fine, but understand the giftedness that is in those young adults. You're going to have a variety of people coming in the doors. The very help that you'll need is going to come from possibly young adults, and there's a variety of things that they'll do. So don't just create a hip, cool little kiosk with somebody standing up there that's going to point them towards the parking team, which you probably don't need right now anyway. Have a table and a space and a place for them to come and share with you, hey, this is what I'm gifted in. And don't let that person leave because they're just going to go down the street and join somebody else. So I cannot encourage you enough to create a table and a place and a time to sit down with them one-on-one, or bring them all at the same time, or have multiple meetings. But that would be my advice to you. I just felt led to give you that.
Do you have one? I don't feel like Trying to sift through what it is, the big one.
I think something that I would really encourage you is think about what you want young adults, whether in your church plant or your class or your community, whatever is most lacking in young adults, pray for extra dosage. Pray for an extra dosage of that for yourself. So the one that my mind automatically thinks of is, man, young adults have to grow in their ability to commit. So you have to grow in your patience. So I would just say, where you see they are lacking, pray for an extra dosage so that you can really show them what it looks like to commit and why they should commit.
That's good. This, man, the one that I keep coming back to is, I feel like if you could just believe in young adults so vocally and visibly over and over again, and this is something that even is hard for me because like I'm a perfectionist, excellence kind of guy, but I just got to see two young adults that were like 21, 22 that are like leading 80 to 100 people inside of a church. Because and the number one thing they said that this guy Nick, who discipled them and empowered them, the thing that impacted them the most is just how much he believed in them. He's so vocal with that, and as I always try to use Jesus as my model and my reference point. It's a good model and reference point to have, and I just feel like it logically, if we were to read a leadership book, like he's so bad, honestly, at like what leaders would say you should do, in the sense of like, if you see a guy, one, you don't give him a great title like, hey, you're going to be rock, even though you're flaky. And then Peter's continually flaky. He cuts a guy's ear off. It's like, I'm so quick to say, okay, what point do we let someone go? And Jesus is more like, cut the guy's ear off. He forgot to pray. You're wanting the left hand and the right hand of the Father. You guys just don't seem to get it. Like you told someone to stop preaching the gospel because they weren't one of you guys, and Jesus says, well, if they weren't against us or for us, like just how many times do they have to fail until you say like, I just don't believe in you guys anymore. Like you guys just keep, all 3 years have been messing it up from beginning to the very last days. You're still messing up. And so I think that's hard for us because it's like there is literally no logical reason to continue to believe in these people, and he still vocally and visibly believed in them and empowered them. And it wasn't even like, okay, I'm going to take less, you're going to do less. It's like, I'm going to still give you more and more and more. And eventually it's like it hit and they got it. So I'm more telling you something I'm learning, and if you could, I think, believe and give away everything, and truly want for the next generation for them to do greater works, like Christ said. That's a posture of the heart, whereas like it's not about my name, it's about kingdom. So I want you as a generation to do greater works than all the glory that our generation did. I still want you to do greater things. Like it would be great if they talk about y'all even more than us. That's truly when you're like, you don't even care, and you guys hopefully don't even care because you want them after you to do more. That's a legacy of kingdom-mindedness that will lead to a huge impact.
Excellent. John, can you close us in prayer? Just pray for the church to have a heart for millennials.
Absolutely. Father God, we just thank you for the opportunity to come together as brothers and sisters, Lord. We're all unified in you, Christ, and we just thank you for the cross. We thank you for the blood that was spilled, Jesus, so that we could have this very freedom and opportunity to do just this, Lord. God, we just want to pray a prayer of blessing over all of our church planters, God, as they are getting prepared to be set out into the world, Father, to fulfill the commission that you gave us, Father. And Lord, I just pray that as they're doing the good work, Father, that they would also keep in mind this generation, Lord, and just that you would give them a wisdom, Lord, to pour into this generation, God, to be able to communicate effectively with this generation, and that Jesus, that God, that some may come to know you through the knowledge that these church planters have, God, with working with others. So, Lord, I just pray for each one of our church planters, God. That is just a great calling. And Jesus, I just pray that you would help them along the way, God, that you would give them incredible wisdom and knowledge, God, that you would open up doors and that you would bless them, Jesus. We love you and we praise you. It's in Christ's holy name.